welcome. This is Carrie with Steel Roots Market, and I am excited to be joining in today for Stencil Sunday Collaboration, hosted by the talented Christy from Funky Junk Inspiration and Mary from the Painted Peach. Be sure to check out their amazing stencil projects linked below and all the others as part of the collaboration. For my project, I decided to create a quick and easy vintage inspired signage with a stencil by JRV. I created this using just a piece of salvaged wood that I found that I had salvaged, and it's just a piece of laminate, very rough. I'm not going to sand it or do anything. It's just a clean dusted off piece. I am going to apply chalk paint all over the front of this and then stencil, as you'll see. To get started, I'm going to use chalk paint, and then my favorite way to apply the paint is by using a car wash sponge that I generally get at a large, you can pick them up at Walmart or Dollar Store or whatever, and then I cut them up into pieces to use to apply paint onto big surfaces like this, and you'll see me do that here. This is a chalk style paint by Miss Lillian's called Black Onyx. I wanted a deep dark black to use for the base, and sometimes with this type of paint I do add a little water. This time I'm just adding it to the sponge to get it a little bit movement, but you will see this works great to add that big swath area of coverage. So I go ahead and speed this up so you can see. Apply this black chalk paint right over. This is a rough board piece of salvage laminate. I did not sand it, so there is like divots and grooves and little pieces that you can see. But I just wanted to let you know, if you go to try and do this at home with that sponge, another nice feature is you can kind of push that paint right into there. So I'm going to let this dry, and I am going to give it 2 coats to make it nice and black finish for this project. So now I'm applying the second coat quickly. I sped it up here for you, but basically just go ahead and really get that coverage in those nooks and crannies and get it to the desired look. Next, we're going to go ahead and get our stencil placed on. Again, this is a JRV stencil that I carry in the shop. I have several stencils. I adore using stencils. They're a great tool to have in your craft stash because there is just so many endless possibilities for projects. If you're a maker for reselling or booth, or you have live sales, they're a fantastic investment. Also for gifting and creating your own home decor. So I'm just trying to figure out my placement for my sign. I have a lot of ideas. You could add in borders, you could add in trims and moldings and IOD, clay pieces, all the things. But I'm going to keep this pretty simple and just, a vintage inspired piece. So I basically take a piece of painter's tape there, attach it to the top so that it's, secured, because this is a rather large stencil. And for those that know stenciling, that may or may not know stenciling, you want to do several light coats of paint to have it stencil, and that way it helps preventing the bleed and makes less cleanup for your finished piece. So I wanted to do a bright white for my stenciling. This would look really neat with creams or golds or any colors for this project, but I decided to go with a bright white chalk paint. Here I'm showing you some stencil brushes that I have. I do offer these also in my shop, but they are JRV stencil brushes, and I grabbed the larger ones thinking I might use them, but I went back to using my trusty one that I always use. That way I have more control for that. But basically for stenciling, you're going to load up and then load off a lot. And I like to load off on the edge of the stencil onto the plastic, and then work my way into the intricate designs. Pouncing is what I'm doing on this particular sign. And the reason why is because, remember, this is a piece of laminate that was not sanded smooth. There is grooves, nooks, crannies, and things in that. So I'm just giving this a good pounce into this stencil. These JRV stencils are very high quality stencil and have a nice thickness to them for that. So this is going to take a bit of a time. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward it so you can see the process. But the main point that I want to make sure to get across is only a little bit of paint is needed on that stencil brush. And with this being white chalk paint over a black, obviously you've got to do several coats. So now it's just sped up fast so you can just see me complete the stenciling, and then I just do, I think it was around 3 or 4 more coats of white paint so that I could get a nice white finish on the whole sign. And now once that was dry, I went ahead and lifted the sign to make sure everything looked good and I was happy with it. So I went ahead and removed the stencil. And I'm very happy with the way it turns out. If you were not happy with the stencil pieces, you could easily go in with a small paintbrush, detailed paintbrush, and some black paint and touch up. But for this one, it was really good. So now I'm trying to decide on how to further add some vintage inspired look to it. And I do decide that I think I'm going to go ahead and put a border around it. And I just quickly grabbed some painter's tape and tape off one side, sealing it down. And then I just take that stencil brush, the same stencil brush, and go around with some of the white paint just to give it a little shading of white. Just get a nice coat of white paint on there. It isn't going to be perfectly covered with that black paint underneath. But then I decide to, instead of taping the whole thing off, I just pull the tape off and just kind of give it a good eyeball and just put that painter's tape back up on top and do the same thing on that all 4 sides. The next step I did was to add a little bit of distressing, and so I just used the piece of tape here and rubbed it down real good, pulling it off, and it would give some, lift some of the black paint off, and I really like the way that looks, so I go through and do that in just different spots. I hit little areas of where I would think there might be some worn vintage wear and tear from the sign. So I just kind of go around and do that just in little spots. Once I'm happy with how that looks, I then take the stencil and line it up and tape it back on. And now I'm going to take some gold paint, and I decide on using an older antique gold look. And I originally wanted, one of my tricks that I like to do is let the paint kind of sit out and get a little bit thicker. You could add some thickening things to it, but tonight I wasn't going to. So I just quickly took tiny little paint and used that antique gold, and I went around the edges just to give it some trim look. And then you're going to see me take it and very light-handedly pounce in different areas of the stencil to give it a little bit of a gold look. Then even lighter hand, I lightly brush, and keeping in mind there's hardly any paint on this stencil brush. I just lightly brush and drag it ever so lightly over the stencil letters. And that is going to give it a very faded, but a little, you'll see in the pictures, just a metallic gold look. But it just gives it a little highlight, an aged highlight for the sign. And I really like the way it turned out. So I kind of eyeball it, go in little spots, light-handed with this application. I then follow up with adding it all around the entire outside edge. I don't make it perfect. I make it just kind of wisp along the edges of that laminate board. And it really adds to the piece to give it a vintage look. If you're interested in any of these stencils or stencil brushes, I have a huge selection of stencils and DIY supplies over at my shop. I'll leave the link in the description. I also will leave the link for the Stencil Sunday Collaboration playlist. And for this spot right here, I am just going over with a matte varnish by Pentart. It's a water-based varnish, and I apply that on, let it dry, and then kind of come in with just a couple little pieces of gold just to kind of give it a little touch-ups, and then I will show you it all displayed. Again, don't forget to check out the hosts, Christy from Funky Junk Inspiration and Mary the Painted Peach, to check out their channels. I invite you to like and subscribe to this page and follow along, because I love to share DIYs for upcycling and creative decor pieces. Thank you for following along as I created this piece. Again, I invite you to like and subscribe to my page, and please feel free to share it out to your friends. Don't forget to head over to the website if you'd like to join my email list to get shop updates and notifications. And don't forget to visit all the other creators in the Stencil Sunday collab. Thank you, everyone.